Everyone, my name is Dirk. Thank you for joining our live, interactive telephone town hall. We're hosting tonight's event to give Congresswoman Spanberger the opportunity to hear directly from you and answer your questions about the issues facing Virginia's families, seniors, and economy. Now, as I mentioned, this is an interactive forum. Congresswoman Spanberger will take in as many questions as she possibly can during this event. So if you have a question, you can press *3 on your telephone keypad at any time. You'll be placed in line to speak with a member of our staff. They'll take down your name and where you're calling from. The next time you hear your name, you will be live on the call and able to ask your question directly. You can also ask a question by submitting one through the portal below our online streaming player. You can find that at spanberger.house.gov/live. If you're watching through Facebook Live and wish to ask a question, we encourage you to visit the Congresswoman streaming portal. And again, that address, spanberger.house.gov/live. Additionally, if you'd like to receive updates from our office via email, please press *6 on your phone keypad at any time, and an operator will collect your email address. Now, we could receive a lot of questions during this event, so if we're not able to address your question, please call our district office at 703-987-2180 during normal business hours. Again, that number is 703-987-2180. Remember, if you have a question during this event, please press *3 on your telephone keypad or type the question right below the streaming player. Now, please welcome Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for tonight's telephone town hall. I want to hear directly from you about the issues facing your families, your communities, and our great Commonwealth. But I want to begin by noting the unfortunate tragedy that occurred just north of Baltimore in neighboring Maryland, the bridge collapse. I want to thank the first responders and the law enforcement officers who were on the scene immediately. I want to thank those who continue to investigate and seek to understand how this could have happened to avoid future tragedies. And certainly I know that all of our thoughts and our prayers are with the families of the workers who are at this point presumed to have died in this terrible tragedy. Virginia certainly stands with our neighbors in Maryland, and moving into the coming weeks, I stand ready to support Maryland through the legislative process and certainly as a neighboring state. But tonight I want to give some updates first on the recent work that we've had in Congress. This month, we have now passed appropriations bills, and that means that President Biden has signed into law legislation that will secure 15 different funding projects across our district. And these are direct investments in infrastructure, transportation, and public safety. And these are projects that our communities across the 7th District brought directly to me, projects requested by localities and community leaders. And they're called community project funding. And I want to just mention these at the beginning of this discussion because just today I was in Stafford, yesterday I was in Spotsylvania, and we'll be at other places across the 7th District talking about these really important investments. So the community project funding process is one that during the appropriations process, community leaders, locality governments, and nonprofit organizations can bring projects forward, projects that would otherwise be eligible for federal grant dollars under existing grant programs. And what we can do is we can work with the localities as they put together a packet of an application, and it requires a lot of work from the localities. So for all of the communities that are receiving these community project funds, I want you to know that the local Board of Supervisor members and local Sheriff's Department and local police departments and local town governments and mayors did tremendous work in order for us to be able to partner on these projects. And what we did was we put forth 15 projects, highlighted, pushed them through the Appropriations Committee, digging into what are the existing federal grant programs that exist and how can we get these community project funds secured within the appropriations process. So, I'm so excited that across our localities, we have tremendous projects. In Culpeper, Culpeper is going to be receiving $380,000 for a new critical incident vehicle for the Culpeper Police Department. Culpeper County is getting $500,000 for improvements to the auditorium at the Carver Center. And Culpeper County will receive more than $130,000 for accessibility improvements at Len Park. The city of Fredericksburg is going to receive more than $200,000 to modernize the American Job Center in Fredericksburg and improve accessibility, and more than $630,000 for renovations and upgrades at the Fredericksburg Police Department's Emergency Operations Center. Over on the western side of the 7th District, Greene County is going to be making major improvements to the Greene County Community Park with federal support of $750,000. And the Greene County Sheriff's Office will be acquiring new virtual reality training system to help keep officers in the community safe with $70,000 going directly to the county. Madison County Sheriff's Office is receiving $450,000 to purchase new equipment and provide reliable emergency radio coverage at Madison County Public Schools. The town of Occoquan has had some major challenges with its aging stormwater management system. And thanks to the town government and the mayor and local community leaders, Occoquan will be receiving more than $900,000 to make much needed improvements. Prince William County is constructing an interchange and improvements at the intersection of Minnieville and Prince William Parkway, and will be receiving $2.5 million to support that project. Spotsylvania County it has ongoing road projects to provide safety and capacity improvements to the I-95 and Route 1 exit 126 interchange area. And there will be more than $4.1 million going towards that project in total. And then $500,000 towards a 1 million gallon water tower to meet increased residential needs and commercial demand. And this is building upon a community project fund last year that we worked together with Spotsylvania County to achieve and to fund. Stafford County, I was in Stafford County this morning to celebrate that there will be $1 million going towards road projects to reduce congestion, improve public safety, $500,000 for Stafford to finish the Route 1 improvements near Courthouse Road. And the Sheriff's Department will be receiving $246,000 for a computerized emergency dispatch system for the Sheriff's Office. So I want to thank all of the local governments, local community leaders for working with us diligently to provide all of the necessary paperwork, all of the necessary information that demonstrates the community need, the county or the town prioritization of these funds. There's very, very strict provisions and accounting and information related to these community project funds. And so I am just grateful for the partnership of all of our localities and all of the teams who worked together with my congressional office to make sure that we could put forth the best packets possible and get 15 out of 15 projects funding. Since arriving in Congress, I have been proud to secure about $42 million for these and other community project funds across the 7th District. So thank you to everyone who helped to make sure that we could bring these wins home to the community. So I want to remind everyone before we get started with questions, my team is here to serve you. If you have an issue with any federal agency, the IRS, the VA, OPM, the list goes on and on, please do not hesitate to call my office at 703-987-2180, or you can contact us at spanberger.house.gov. And with that, I look forward to your questions.
All right, a quick reminder for everyone that's joined us on the line, the Congresswoman is here to answer your questions. And if you've got a question on your mind, all you need to do is press *3 on your telephone keypad to enter the question queue. Again, to ask a question tonight, please press *3. And our first caller, we've got Karen joining us from Stafford. Karen, you are live with Congresswoman Spanberger. What's on your mind?
Good evening, Congressman.
Good evening.
I'm a retired federal employee. I also have TRICARE. The pharmaceuticals give discounts on the prescription drugs, but they omit anybody that has a government insurance. I'm wondering if there's anything that Congress can do about that.
Karen, let me ask you a follow-up question. Are you saying that the pharmaceuticals, like if you were to get one of the coupons, or if you're using GoodRx, is that the situation that you're?
GoodRx is one of them. I
Okay.
am on insulin, and the last time that it happened was with Basaglar, the quick pen.
Okay.
I needed a refill that my insurance carrier wouldn't cover. And so I looked for coupons. I found that there was a discount. I found one through GoodRx. I was told that I could not get the discount because I have government insurance.
So Karen, I have never had anyone bring this question to me before. So what I'm going to do is get follow-up information, and we'll dig into this one a little bit more and follow up directly on your circumstance. And it might, I'd love to learn if this is unique to you, though likely it would not be, and see how we can address this issue. So I apologize. I'm not going to be able to answer the question on the town hall, but to my team, let's make sure we have all of Karen's follow-up so we can dig into her situation a bit more, and then we'll follow up with a detailed answer.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman. Moving on, I've got an online question that was submitted by Jackson for you. And the question is, have you talked to your colleagues in the Senate on extending the ratification deadline for the Equal Rights Amendment?
Jackson, this is a great question. The answer to your question is yes, but also not recently. So that's a good reminder to do so. Just so that everyone knows what Jackson's talking about, Virginia proudly was the 38th and final state to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment, which would make it the 28th Amendment to the Constitution, and thereby clearly defining that equal rights under the Constitution exist regardless of one's for men, for women, regardless of one's gender. And so we passed it in the Virginia legislature, ratification. But some years ago, after the original passage, once ratification had begun, some years ago, there was put a deadline. Now, we certainly have had other constitutional amendments go through regardless of potential deadlines that have been put in place. But we do have a legislative effort within Congress to clearly say that it is not Congress's intent to put a deadline on the ratification of the Equal Rights Amendment. We have passed it in the House of Representatives in the past. Currently, we have a procedural effort called a discharge petition trying to get that bill to come to the floor. But last Congress, when we had passed it, we certainly had many conversations with our Senate counterparts trying to urge them to pass it, so there would be no question about this issue of a deadline. But my hope would be that the archivist would recognize that the 38th state has indeed ratified and should move forward with filing that amendment. But thank you for the reminder, Jackson. I will remember to update my colleagues on this. In the House, I'm a member of the Equal Rights Caucus, and so we've got a good group of folks who are focused on getting the Equal Rights Amendment finally put into the Constitution.
So you can get involved in tonight's conversation by pressing *3 on your telephone keypad at any time. Again, to ask a question live on this call, please press *3 to enter the question queue. Next up, we're heading out to Woodbridge. We've got Irwin on the line with us. Irwin, welcome to the call. Go ahead with your question, please.
Yes, Congresswoman. I'm curious on the status of I don't know what you call it, the procedure of vote in the House to bypass the Republican blocking aid to Ukraine. I think there was a move by the leadership there to invoke some kind of a procedure to go past them and go ahead and get the aid bill through. So I'm curious on where that is.
Absolutely. Erwin, thank you for raising this issue. So the National Security Supplemental, which includes aid to Ukraine, vitally needed aid to Ukraine. What we know is that the Ukrainians just at this point don't have enough munitions. They are running out of the ability to intercept potentially incoming fire into their cities. And the National Security Supplemental passed the United States Senate with 70 votes, broad bipartisan support. And up until now, Speaker Johnson, and continuing at this point, Speaker Johnson is refusing or unwilling to bring the bill forward for a vote. Again, it passed with 70 votes in the Senate. It would pass easily in the House if we were to bring it forward. The challenges that he may speak of is that there's worry that they would not be able to get it through the Rules Committee. Currently on the Rules Committee, there are a couple colleagues who vehemently oppose, everything from funding the government to defending our own national security and supporting our allies. But the reality is that this bill is broadly bipartisan, just as it would receive broad bipartisan support in the House, just as it did in the Senate. And so there was much talk and much urging for the speaker to bring it under what's called the suspension rule, which would mean it would need 290 votes to pass. By estimates with my Republican colleagues who have said that they wanted to vote for it, those votes ideally would be there. But in the absence of the speaker bringing the bill forward, Erwin, what you're discussing is the discharge petition. Now, the discharge petition is a process by which we submit a document before to the House of Representatives, and Congressman Jim McGovern of Massachusetts did this some time ago. It needs to what's called ripen. So you need to file it and then wait a period of time. Once it's ripened, you can begin signing it. So we have begun signing that. The last time I checked, there was well over 150 and climbing numbers. It needs to get to 218. The challenge here is it needs to get to 218 regardless of how many members of Congress are in Congress. Notably, Congressman Ken Buck, who is a former Congressman Ken Buck, who is a Republican who announced that he would be resigning on his last day in Congress, he signed the discharge petition. So there we have one bit of bipartisan support and recognition that this bill must come forward. When we get to 218, that is the mechanism that would force the speaker to bring the bill. Notably, Ken Buck is currently the only Republican member who has signed that discharge petition, and we will need a few in order to get us to that 218 threshold. We continue to try and get the speaker to bring the bill forward. We're continuing to work to get to 218. But the reality is, the sad reality is that every day that he delays is a day that we potentially allow for Vladimir Putin to make major gains. Every day that the Ukrainians don't have the support that they need. And just a reminder to everyone, we are not in this alone. Our European partners, our partners and allies throughout the world are providing tremendous support, and many of them at a far greater percentage of their own GDP than we are. But the United States is a vital ally. We've demonstrated leadership in our support for our Ukrainian partners from day one, and we've been vital in bringing other people along with us. We also have the munitions and some of the lethal aid items that they need, and so they need to get them from us, or they need us to resupply others who are moving munitions on onto Ukraine. So, Erwin, thank you for bringing this question forward. If anyone, there's currently now a threat of a motion to vacate because the Congresswoman from Georgia is quite displeased with Speaker Johnson. So there's a bit of chaos among my counterparts on the other side of the aisle. But those of us who want to govern and do our job and support our allies and defend democracy have been urging him to bring the bill forward, allow those who want to vote for it to vote for it. And I have said very publicly that, if in this case it's Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene, if she brings a discharge petition forward for a vote because he brings Ukraine aid, that I know that many, many folks on my side of the aisle would vote to table that motion and basically keep it from moving forward. So we continue to urge him. We're trying the discharge petition route. We're trying all routes, but we're not there yet.
So are you aware that the Congresswoman and her staff frequently send out updates and information to keep you informed? They do that through an e-newsletter, and you can get signed up to receive that by pressing *6 on your telephone keypad right now. Again, to get enrolled in the Congresswoman's e-newsletter, please press *6. Now let's go check in with Wendy, who joins us live on the line. Wendy, you're live with Congresswoman Spanberger. What's on your mind?
Oh, thank you very much. I want to thank you, Congresswoman Spanberger. I really appreciate all that you do for us as Virginians, for women, and for our democracy. I think you're doing an awesome job, and I hope you're our next governor, but I digress. So what I don't have a question. I wanted to throw something out regarding daylight savings time. So it seems to come up every year, and it doesn't seem to get signed in to have just one time and not do the spring forward, fall back thing, which I think is disruptive, inconvenient, not good for people's biorhythms. It's antiquated. I don't really think it adds value to our lives particularly anymore. And I do know people feel strongly one way or another. And I think a reasonable compromise would be to do 30 minutes. For example, we're in daylight savings time. So when it comes time to fall back, so to speak, we would change the clock 30 minutes instead of an hour, and then just leave it there permanently. And that I think that would be a reasonable compromise that people could live with.
So, Wendy, I have heard many opinions on this topic, many opinions on this topic, but I honestly have never heard this suggestion before. So if I understand correctly, you're saying change it one more time, split the difference on that 30-minute, and then stay there. So just to comment, because this, of course, did come to the center of a conversation, aggressively so, in the last Congress, because Marco Rubio, senator from Florida, had led an effort to do away with the clock change. He passed it in the Senate. It didn't move in the House. Kind of frankly speaking, it was brought by voice vote and surprised some of the senators that it had made it onto the calendar for that day. And remarkably, and you said there's a lot of people with a lot of feelings on this. Remarkably, when that passed in the Senate and it made news, the amount of incoming feedback that we received to my congressional office was pretty extraordinary, because people feel very, very strongly. What is universal is people hate changing clocks, but what is also true is people feel very strongly about which way to go to keep daylight saving time or not. And I honestly, Wendy, I've never received the suggestion of kind of splitting the difference. On this topic, I don't anticipate that we will have a bill moving forward, at least not in the House on this. But I will continue. If anyone listening has a strong opinion, I welcome you to send it to my office. We do keep and catalog the responses, particularly on something that is, frankly, quite straightforward. There's three options: don't make a change, or make a change to, make either daylight saving, or the other one, standard, to elongate that throughout the year and do away with the change. So thank you for bringing this topic up. If anybody has strong opinions, please let me know. And it is, particularly really, really interesting, the feedback that we've gotten on this issue over the years.
Moving on to our next question, we've got Mark joining us on the line. Hello, Mark. Welcome to the call. Go ahead with your question.
Yes. My question involved record keeping and safeguarding records. And from someone outside of government, it seems that once you leave office, why do you need to keep all these files and boxes of files in your garage? Isn't there something in place where the archivists, the librarians, someone keeps track and wants them back? And are they enforced or not enforced? Where there's a Mar-a-Lago suit going on right now of incredible numbers of documents, and there's fears that they could easily be stolen or leaked. And these are highly confidential information that needs to be safeguarded. I just wonder what her comments would be on this.
Mark, you raise I appreciate the way that you framed this question and talked about, the documents that we know that have left the White House. Certainly the documents that were in the former president's hotel down in Florida, and also the documents of now president, at the time former Vice President Biden's home. So there is a process, and I say this because I serve as a member of the House Intelligence Committee, and our focus, of course, has been related to the classified documents. And, it's been well reported, the kind of scope and, frankly speaking, the high level of classification of some of the documents that were, ultimately recovered from former President Trump's home with, or hotel which has many space that's open to the public, and potentially poses a great risk. So the answer to your question is there is a process. There is a process by which classified documents should be held in classified spaces and should be categorized and safeguarded. And that exists for any person. As a member of the House Intelligence Committee, I never get to take any of those documents home. As a former intelligence officer, never got to take any of those documents home. And there are clear parameters for how particularly classified documents must be handled. As it relates more broadly to kind of presidential or vice presidential documents, there is an entire process for making sure that not just documents, but gifts received by foreign governments or documents related to a president's time in office, there is a process for making sure that those documents are well cataloged, and that it is known where they are. In fact, that's how it became possible for the government to be able, from a record keeping standpoint, to request specific documents back, specific items back. Even something as straightforward as some of the correspondence between the former president and Kim Jong-un of North Korea, as was broadly reported in the press as an example of one of the documents that was being sought. So the issue is, yes, there is a process. That process needs to be much better, much stronger. The process, in fact, does require that those who are sorting the documents, sometimes the individual themselves and sometimes related staff members, understand kind of the scope and size of information and importance of information before them. But certainly when the Department of Justice or when the federal government is asking for documents back, the obligation of any individual is to provide them back. So the reason that I say that there is clearly room for improvement is because there's clearly room for improvement. And from an oversight standpoint, what I can tell you is that within the House Intelligence Committee, this has been a topic where we have been engaging in oversight to make sure that, certainly if there's any, uh, uh, non-compliance that is purposeful and intentional, that we have parameters to be able to remedy that in the moment and not risk documents finding their way to places they shouldn't be, or being taken to places that they shouldn't be, or being shown to people who shouldn't see them. But also that the parameters are very, very clear, so that there is never any inadvertent efforts that would allow for classified or sensitive documents, or even those that may not even be classified or sensitive, but that do belong to the United States government as a matter of record related to the Presidential Records Act, that those be in the possession of the U.S. government as is required. And so we continue to do oversight on that, and certainly, there's elements from a law enforcement standpoint, but there are certainly clear improvements in policy and process that can be made when there is an outgoing president, and documents in that very sort of quick period of time when there's the inauguration of one and the outgoing move of another, that process can be improved upon. And that's something that that we have conducted oversight on, and I can assure you is in the process of occurring.
Thank you to everyone that has joined us for this live telephone town hall with Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger. Now, this forum is interactive, and we're looking to hear from you. So if you've got a question, please press *3 on your phone keypad to enter the question queue. Again, to ask a question during this call, please press *3. You can also ask a question by submitting your name and question right underneath the video portal. It's on our streaming player at spanberger.house.gov/live. Now let's get to our next question. This one comes from Richard. Hello, Richard. You are live with Congresswoman Spanberger. What's on your mind?
Hello, Congresswoman. Thank you very much for having this event.
Thank you.
My broad question deals with inefficiencies in the Social Security Administration. I noted that the administrator, I think in late 2022, promised the Congress that the administration was going to take efforts to get rid of the backlog and the long wait times and other things that had built up as a result of many of the offices closing during the COVID pandemic. But I just went on, started taking Social Security last August. My wife and I are both on Medicare, but I'm the only one who takes Social Security. We got letters at the end of last year, November and December, telling us 8 letters in 2 months, telling us that our premiums for the IRMA that we pay, the extra IRMA adjustment, was going to double, and it was going to be retroactive to January because they decided that they didn't charge us enough the first time around. So I had retired at the end of January 22, so I went in and submitted a life-changing event form. And the bottom line of all this is that it's not so much my personal issue as it is just so incredibly difficult to deal with the Social Security Administration. I don't think the Manassas office answers the local line, so you have to call the national number. They usually either can't answer the question, or they'll say, well, we'll send a note to the local office, and they've got a week or they've got 2 months to get back to you. You go over there in person, and it looks like the DMV. You get in line an hour before the place opens so that you can make sure you can get an early ticket and get your case heard without spending the morning or the day there. So I'm not seeing these efficiencies. One time while I was in line there, I called the national number to see if I could make an appointment for later, and the lady very apologetic and said, well, I'm looking at their calendar and it only goes out a month and a half and there are no appointments available.
Oh my
So
gosh.
it's just like pulling teeth to deal with the Social Security Administration, and you have to deal with them either in Medicare, if not in Social Security itself. When I sent over my forms when I first got on it to ask for a tax withholding, they lost the form. It never got there somehow, so I had to go over and do it in person and go through this drill there. But it's just a real pain, and I don't think that the Congress is holding the administrator's feet to the fire on what he promised over a year ago.
So Richard, I want to thank you. And for people listening, I know because I have talked to many constituents, and certainly my team has, that everything that you said from start to finish, unfortunately, is an experience that others have had. Not universally, right? Not universally across the board. But two elements of what you talked about, I know to be an ongoing challenge. Certainly, as you mentioned, the Social Security Administrator came before Congress and talked through the adjustments and the changes and the commitment that he was making to really surge ahead and get rid of the backlog in filings that they had for some time. That, frankly, kind of resulted in the early days of COVID and just became that much harder for them to recover from. What I know to be the case is that, generally speaking, they have made tremendous progress. There's still more progress to be done. And the second piece that you mentioned, and then I'll get to kind of what to do about it. The second piece that you mentioned, which is, you get your Social Security and then you later receive kind of a reallocation. This is something that is a challenge that many people, particularly former federal employees, have faced, or depending upon the timing of one's retirement, people have faced. And so what I'm going to say that we need to do about it is I want to have my team look into your circumstance. We have dealt with this before. And so, Richard, I'm answering this specific to you, but anybody else who's listening who kind of hears a familiar story, when my office can be helpful with federal agencies, that includes with Social Security, we can engage, we can open a case. We cannot determine outcomes, obviously, but we can make sure that we are helping to process questions through the system, and particularly for people who are new to Social Security, when there is questions about, what they should be receiving. We have done many an inquiry and addressed many a challenge that some of our constituents have been facing. So Richard, we should have your information from when you first called, so we'll follow up with you. But if anyone else is facing any challenges with Social Security, please also call our office. I'd love for us to be able to open a case for you. If you go to our website, spanberger.house.gov, we've got some of the success stories up on the website, and you will see that many of them relate to Social Security. So that is an action item for us. But then also, Richard, your question is well timed, and we will follow up with an inquiry over to Social Security Administration to get any updates about how they are doing kind of holistically in meeting the promises that they put forth to Congress during that congressional hearing. So 2 action items for us on that one. And anybody listening, feel free to call in if any of the challenges Richard's facing sound familiar to you.
So I encourage everyone listening in to get signed up for the Congresswoman's e-newsletter. You can do that by pressing *6 on your telephone keypad right now. Again, to get enrolled in the Congresswoman's e-newsletter, please press *6. And to ask a question live during this telephone town hall, please press *3. Let's meet George as we bring him live on the call. Welcome, George. Go ahead with your question.
This is pretty simple. but the answer is not going to be simple. And that's why is the president and Congress not dealing with the actual problem instead of the symptom of their southern borders? For example, I'm talking about Haiti and the Central American countries. These people were starving. They're getting taken care of by the coyotes. They are being murdered, and you aren't going to stop that type of person from entering this country unless you deal with the problem down there. And I don't hear any discussion about trying to resolve the problem in these countries that are feeding our border. Thank you.
Thank you. So, George, I really appreciate your question because I think you are completely right that so frequently we talk about the challenges that we face as a country at the southern border, challenges to our immigration system, an asylum process that is broken. It takes years for someone to process through. There are not enough visas, particularly H-2A and H-2B visas for those who want to come and work here in the United States. But really, at the heart of it is, what are the challenges throughout Central and South America that would push someone to flee their home, either for economic reasons or for, fear of their safety and security back home, that they would flee their country, leave their family, and try to start over in a new country in the United States. And so back in 2022, I went with colleagues. At the time I was serving on the Foreign Affairs Committee, and I went with colleagues from the Homeland Security Committee to Central America. And we went to El Salvador and Honduras and Nicaragua to talk about what types of investments from U.S. industry or U.S.-based companies, or what sort of USAID training programs or aid efforts on the ground support this stability efforts, stabilization efforts, or address some of the root causes. And as an example, the data that they presented us at that time was that in El Salvador, at the point in time when someone makes $400 a month, and they do use US dollars in El Salvador. So at the point in time when someone makes $400 a month US, that is the point in time when they become 50% less likely to leave their home country, El Salvador in this case, because of a need of economic stability, or because of an economic need to be able to provide for their family. And so when we think through what sort of investments, what sort of ways can the Department of State or the Department of Commerce work with, all of our U.S. companies that might source some of their items and their textiles from Asia or Southeast Asia or China, how can we, through education, through Department of State programs, through basic USAID programs or Department of Commerce programs, be part of or contribute to an effort to what we also call nearshoring, right? Bringing business interests or bringing U.S. or U.S. related investments, and those are commercial dollars, private dollars, not necessarily federal dollars, to our hemisphere, and indeed work to ensure that there are more of those jobs that pay, within that range where someone is now far less likely to think, I need to leave my home, I need to flee, I'm going to go take that dangerous journey, I'm going to pay, thousands of dollars to coyotes, I'm going to essentially, through that action, also, put money into the pockets of these transnational criminal organizations that exploit the vulnerable people trying to take this dangerous journey. And there's some really interesting efforts as it relates to IT training that the U.S. State Department is engaged in, where there's a number of U.S. companies that are hiring tech workers for web development at centers throughout places in Central America. There's some really interesting efforts afoot to bring textile kind of completion. So some of the T-shirts you might buy and some of the kind of stores you regularly see in the mall, making those T-shirts, making those pants, and doing it in our hemisphere with essentially, family sustaining jobs and wages. It is central and key to getting at these root causes. And then through our efforts, through diplomatic efforts, through aid endeavors, through civic engagement, there is so much that the United States is doing, but more of a focus that we can put on those efforts as it relates to strengthening our partnerships and supporting, our partners throughout Central America, particularly as they work to, address some of the real challenges on the ground that might relate to gang violence or transnational criminal organizations or, other efforts that render a country less stable and really threaten to be a place that kind of foments those root causes. And so as a former intelligence officer, looking at root causes, certainly looking at some of the legislation that I have passed under former President Trump and President Biden as it relates to using information to help drive some of our security priorities along the border is addressing root causes through diplomacy and through commercial investment. This is the work of so many extraordinary diplomats who are serving certainly within the Western Hemisphere, but far beyond as well. So thank you for bringing this up. You're right. So frequently we talk about just the point in time when people arrive at our border, but addressing root causes, but also ensuring that we have an asylum program that works and that we have far more visas to meet the needs of the employers here in the United States who want to hire someone, particularly in the agriculture sector or in the tourism sector. It's extraordinarily important that we recognize that our communities and our economies really want to be able to go through these visa programs to hire people. And in fact, it is certainly a fantastic way for someone to come to the United States, to do so legally, to pay into the system, and with some of the seasonal work, to return home to their family and their friends and their loved ones and their country that they know, and to be able to do so regularly if that's the path that they choose, as so many have over the years. So with that, I thank you for the question and the ability to speak to it a bit more.
Congresswoman, staying on this topic you've just been discussing, we have a question submitted by Beth online, and she says, I'd like to hear the details of the bipartisan border control immigration bill that Mr. Trump intercepted. Could you provide highlights and or publish source of the provision?
Yeah, so what she's talking about is there was a bill, the National Security Supplemental, which is the bill that I spoke to earlier. That is the bill that addresses the need for aid to Ukraine. And again, that is the U.S. aid to Ukraine. Our partners and allies throughout Europe and the rest of the world are also providing support to our Ukrainian partners. Aid to Ukraine, humanitarian aid to Palestinian civilians in Gaza and the West Bank, and humanitarian aid to Israelis impacted by the ongoing conflict, support to our Israeli partners, and support to our allies in Taiwan. There was a Senate bill that also included a bipartisan negotiated effort that would have vastly increased our border security investments to the tune of $20 billion. And it would be an investment to. So this is the National Security Supplemental. This is the premise was we've got our aid to our partners and allies, and we also need to address the immediacy of the challenge facing our border. This is the bill that the Senate was ready to put forward, and the Speaker of the House said he would not even bring it up. He called it dead on arrival, and in the end, the Senate didn't even vote on it. This is a bill that was negotiated by Chris Murphy, a Democrat, and Senator James Lankford, a Republican. Both of those two senators worked tirelessly on this bill. Came to an extraordinary and frankly, in recent years, unprecedented agreement in the comprehensive nature of what they were agreeing to. They got senators to join with them. They had the bipartisan support that they needed until Speaker Johnson tanked those efforts. Anyone who wants to learn even more about this, Senator Lankford and Senator Murphy still have the full details of the bill up on their Senate websites. But it's $20 billion total. It's to add more Customs and Border Patrol personnel, right? They're understaffed given the challenges that they face. To add more asylum officers to make the process faster and fairer. So frequently it is true that it is not a functioning system where someone files for asylum and 4, 5, 6 years later, they have that asylum hearing. In that interim time, they are starting a life in the United States. And that process needs to be quick, and it needs to be fair, and it needs to be fast. The bill would have also added more immigration judges to reduce that backlog of cases. So it's officers to process them, judges to adjudicate them, and it would have installed fentanyl inspection machines at ports of entry. As I do a lot of work related to the fentanyl crisis, both trying to detect it at ports of entry, detect it once it's in our communities, and support those who are facing, be it law enforcement or be it families and loved ones of those facing a substance use disorder. Fentanyl is such an extraordinary challenge for our law enforcement officers because a tiny, tiny bit of it is so incredibly potent and so incredibly deadly. And because it is potent in such small quantities, it is so hard to detect because it can be shipped in small quantities. And so to be able to put machines specifically for the purpose of detecting fentanyl at our ports of entry would have been an extraordinary step forward. So these are the provisions of a bill that took months to negotiate, was ready to pass the Senate. Unfortunately, former President Trump said he didn't want to see a border security bill actually move, and so the Speaker of the House said it was dead on arrival. But it was a substantial undertaking, and certainly the result of strenuous negotiations. Nobody, neither Murphy nor Lankford claimed to love every provision, but it was exactly what it should have been, which is a very, very difficultly negotiated but important piece of legislation that unfortunately it does not appear to be able to move forward because of political antics by frankly speaking, the former president and the Speaker of the House.
Let's go to the phone for our next question. We've got Dr. Usman with us now. Doctor, you're live on the call. Go ahead with your question, please.
Hi, good evening, Congresswoman Spanberger. Thank you so much for listening and engaging with your constituents, and we hope that this tradition will continue when you will become the governor of Virginia. So my question is regarding, I'm representing Pakistani American community here, and we really appreciate the last time you issued a letter to Secretary Blinken on February 6th regarding the upcoming elections. So now the elections, they held, and the Pakistani army, as expected, they took over and they changed the results. They did like a daylight robbery in rigging the elections, and now they have their puppets, the criminals who are ruling the country, and the 250 million people, they're still suffering. and many of the opposition leadership, who were elected, they still were not able to take oath of the assembly seats because of the brutality from the military leadership. We just had a hearing which was, held by the Foreign Relations Committee last week, and the State Department, they hope that the judiciary will take some notice of the rigging allegations. But I don't know if you have seen yesterday, a letter was issued by the 6 senior judges of the High Court that they've been pressured, their families were made hostage, and they have some video recordings in their bedrooms by the military establishment, and they were seeking the justice as well. So we're just asking that, how you can help the Pakistani American diaspora who is suffering, their families back home are suffering, to take this issue to State Department and Biden administration, where they can, apply some, restrictions on the people who are involved in the human rights violations and rigging of the elections. And they should not get, any kind of economic support until the true mandate of the people is recognized. So again, thank you so much, and we're looking forward for your help in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Usman. And just to speak a little bit to the discussion that Dr. Usman brought up, representing the 7th District of Virginia, I represent so many wonderful Virginians who have chosen to make Virginia their home, but still have family back in other countries and their original country of origin. And so frequently I am honored to have constituents who will bring very real, very earnest stories about the challenges that their family members or their friends are facing in other countries. And it becomes a real concern and a real priority issue for me, particularly when what has happened along the way is that over the years that I've represented the 7th District, there have even been people here in the United States who, when they use their right of free speech to be critical of another government or to be critical of something that's happening elsewhere in the world, that their family members back in another country face repercussions. And the idea that any person here in the United States would have their First Amendment rights impeded or their family threatened overseas because of what they say and what they say here is just untenable. And so I do a lot of work as a former member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, standing up for democratic values and American values, and certainly the United States' relationship with partners, allies, and those with whom we have challenged relationships with, and standing up for the rule of law and the importance and value of free and fair elections. And so the example that Dr. Usman was giving related to Pakistan, there have been tremendous concerns about the recent Pakistani elections. There have been tremendous acts of aggression against those in Pakistan who might have family members outside of Pakistan who are advocating for greater transparency and freedom, who are speaking out in opposition to the government. And as Dr. Usman mentioned, there was recently a Foreign Affairs Committee hearing. And I mention this because this is a bit of the work that is specific to different diaspora communities, but also important. And so I want to make sure that everyone knows that happens. And so to follow up specific to the issue of Pakistan, I'll follow up with the chairman of the Foreign Affairs Committee and the ranking member of the Foreign Affairs Committee in those teams to see if there's any action being taken by the larger committee. And then depending if there is, I might join them in those efforts in support of my constituents and democratic values and free and fair elections. Or I might take individual action and do an inquiry to the State Department about what is the current kind of U.S. strategy for contending with challenges related to the Pakistani elections. So Dr. Usman, specific to you, I will follow up directly to your question and let you know how I will be proceeding.
So, Congresswoman, that looks like all the time we have for questions this evening, but I definitely want to make sure that we give you time to provide us with some closing thoughts, please.
I want to thank everyone for joining this evening. Thanks for letting us run over a little bit long. It's always a delight to hear the broad scope of questions that we have. Everything from issues of international affairs and root causes of immigration and challenges at the border, and the Equal Rights Amendment in Virginia's place as the 38th state to have actually ratified. Issues of daylight savings time and kind of the brass tacks, how we live our lives, issues related to ensuring that the government processes, be it the Social Security Administration or with our record keeping, is occurring as it should. And so I want to thank everyone for listening this evening. Thanks for joining. Thanks for the opportunity to answer your questions or follow up on your concern. And I want to just remind everyone that we have a newsletter we send out weekly with lots of good information about the work that the office is doing and how we might be helpful to you. And I also want to remind everyone that if you are facing challenges with Social Security, with the VA, with OPM, with State Department, passport issue, you name it, please, if it's a federal agency, do give us a call. And we'll try and make sure that we can help you any way we can. And certainly if there's a delay happening, get to the bottom of that and make sure that you're getting the quick attention that you deserve. I hope everyone has a lovely rest of the evening. I hope you didn't get caught in too much traffic because of the weather. Certainly, it was a rough one on the roads today. But thank you for taking the time to join. I appreciate the opportunity to serve you and look forward to the next one. And in the interim, if you need anything, please give my congressional office a call. And once again, thank you for the opportunity to serve as your representative in Congress.
As mentioned, we're coming to the end of our live event this evening. Thank you for taking the time to join us for this important Virginia-focused telephone town hall with Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger. We truly appreciate the opportunity to answer your questions. But if we weren't able to get to your question this evening, you can call our district office at 703-987-2180 during normal business hours. Again, 703-987-2180. Or you can go to spanberger.house.gov. Thank you again. Stay safe. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Goodbye.